Bhakti,
yeah. Hare Krishna, Priya Satnam Bolo Obeisances, all glories to Guru Maharaj and Prabhupada. So today I have a very interesting topic for discussion, which is on controlling anger. Now, with the exception of the devotees in this conference, almost everybody has problems with anger. And it tends to come up at the most inopportune time. And the scriptures are there essentially to help us deal with all kinds of issues, practical and spiritual, physical, all kinds of issues. So I want to take help from one pastime in the Bhagavatam, which talks about it basically runs on the anatomy of anger. And of course, Bhagavatam being Bhagavatam does not leave us over there. It also talks us about how we can address it from a spiritual perspective. So let me share my screen. Mm-hmm. So cultivating tolerance and controlling anger, kind of two sides of the same coin. And this is based on the pastime of Lord Shiva and Prajapati Daksha. Most of you are aware of it because you're participating in the weekly study of the Bhagavatam. Some of you have probably presented on this pastime. So I won't spend too much time on the pastime. I'll give you a brief overview and then speak about the lessons that it gives us, and of course, discussion. So this pastime appears in the 4th canto, 2nd chapter, and Prajapati Daksha is the son of Brahma, and by Prajapati it means that his service is to create progeny. So he once arranged for a yajna to be conducted for the welfare of the universe, which is what great personalities do. That they think about the welfare of others. And Daksha, being the son of Brahma and a great Prajapati, so he arranged for a big yajna. It's explained that it's in the category of karmakanda. So essentially for material welfare. When the assembly was sitting, waiting for the yajna to start, then Daksha enters. And Prajapati Daksha is described as so effulgent that almost everybody sitting in the assembly was diminished by his presence. And body effulgence is characteristics of one's exalted nature. So the point that is made is that Daksha is a very exalted personality. We see that how he becomes victim to anger, and how even such exalted personalities can suffer so much because of the debilitating effects of anger. So Daksha enters, and everybody with the exception of Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva stand up as a sign of respect. So it is said in the Mahabharata that when an elder enters into the room, those who are younger, if they do not stand up, their lifespan is reduced. And actually, it gives a kind of a scientific explanation that by the influence of the personality of the elders, the pran or the life airs in the body of those who are younger, they rise. And if the person does not rise at the same time, then it loosens the connection between the pran and the gross body, thereby reducing the lifespan. So, as a sign of respect for Daksha, with the exception of Brahma and Shiv, everybody stood up. Now, Brahma has the position of being the father of Daksha. So, he was not expected to stand, and Daksha acknowledges it. So, he first goes and gives obeisances to Brahma. But Lord Shiva, he's married to the daughter of Daksha. So even though Lord Shiva himself is born from Brahma, and in that way he is at the same level of Daksha, but in terms of his stature, he's even more exalted than Brahma. He's right next to Lord Vishnu. But in terms of relationship, he was the son-in-law of Daksha. Son-in-law is like a son. So Daksha becomes very angry that Lord Shiva does not stand to pay him respect. So he becomes very, very insulting to Lord Shiva. He criticizes him, saying that he associates with ghosts and hobgoblins, he lives in graveyard, and he smears his body with dust. He's poor. I didn't really want to give him my daughter in marriage. And then he indirectly criticizes Brahma also, that it was because of Brahma I gave Sati, but he's not qualified to be my son-in-law. And then finally he curses Shiva that he will not have a share of the yajna ahutis, the sacrificial obligations. So Lord Shiva is patiently listening to this outburst of Daksha. Even when he's cursed, Lord Shiva does not react, but he simply gets up and leaves. So we see here the attitude of one who is exalted. That Lord Shiva did not reciprocate anger with anger. But he could see that Daksha, under the influence of anger, was actually mad. That's what anger does to the person. The person loses their ability to discriminate. So just like a person is tolerant to another person who's mad, so there's a mad person and the person is saying all kinds of insulting things, the person does not take offense. He says this person is mad. So similarly, Lord Shiva, he could see that Daksha was under the influence of anger, so he gets up and leaves. But Nandi, who is the bull carrier of Lord Shiva, he was very angry that his lord had been cursed in this way. So after Lord Shiva leaves, Nandi gets well, Lord Shiva is still not actually left, but Lord Shiva is still sitting quietly. Nandi actually, he gets up and then he curses Daksha. And then he curses the Brahmanas also for sitting quietly and supporting Daksha. Now, when Nandi curses the Brahmins, then Bhrigu gets angry. Bhrigu is the leader of the Brahmins, and he curses the followers of Lord Shiva. So, a total of 15 curses are exchanged in a matter of a few minutes following the anger of Daksha. And they have a long-term and widespread impact. Like Nandi says to the Brahmanas that you will lose your Brahmanical prowess, and you will only perform bhakti for the sake of money, and you will become pretenders. And Bhrigu curses the followers of Lord Shiva that they will become drunkards and intoxicants, and they will be in the mode of ignorance. To this day, we see the impact of that curse. We still see that there are Brahmanas who are Brahmanas in name only. That they are using their being a Brahman as a profession. That's the curse of Nandi. And we also see how people who are taking to intoxicants and to meat eating and other kinds of illicit activities, they tend to become followers of Lord Shiva. They'll smoke ganja and take liquor, and they say that's what Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is a Vaishnava. He does not do all that. Influence of the curse of Bhrigu. Now, it did not stop over there. Because of all this back and forth of cursing, and Lord Shiva leaves, there's a lot of tension that is still between Daksha and Lord Shiva. So, after some time, Sachijivan Prabhu, maybe you want to mute yourself? Thank you. So, after some time, Daksha arranges for another yajna. But this time he does not invite Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva is okay, fine, no problems. But Sati Devi, she is very disturbed that there is this huge function at my father's house. All my sisters will come, all my friends will come. And I have all this jewelry to wear, I have all this dress to wear. And because of you, I cannot go. And Lord Shiva tries to counsel her that if you go, it's not going to be good for you. You will be insulted. And then we see the second anger of Sati over Lord Shiva. Even though it's not Lord Shiva's fault, but Sati becomes angry at Lord Shiva. This is more subtle anger. It's anger through glances and heavy breathing. But out of that anger, she disobeys the advice. Lord Shiva does not give her instruction, but gives her advice, better for you not to go. But she disobeys that advice and goes anyway. And when she goes, then she sees that her father is completely ignoring her. She also sees that when the yajnas are being performed, then there are no oblations being offered to her husband, Lord Shiva. So Sati Devi, in her anger, she gives up her body. So we see now the cascading effect of the original anger of Daksha, that his own daughter has given up her body. That's how the term Sati came into existence. Now, it did not stop over here also. When Lord Shiva heard that Sati Devi had given up his body, now he becomes angry. at Daksha. So he creates from a strand of his hair Veerbhadra. And Veerbhadra goes with his other associates and he destroys the yajna. He kills Daksha and they desecrate the area and then they come. So we're getting a sense of how anger is like a tsunami. It may start off as a small ripple, but then it grows and grows and grows. And as it spreads, its influence becomes more and more prominent. We see 4 causes of anger in this pastime. So we see the anger of Daksha to Lord Shiva. What was the cause of that anger? Envy. So Daksha was always envious. Lord Shiva reveals that later on. Daksha is always envious of Lord Shiva because in his heart he knows that Lord Shiva is a more exalted personality. And the nature of envy is that it is unreasonable. So rather than accepting the fact and glorifying the fact that he has an exalted son-in-law, the envy of Daksha makes him angry. And it was just like dry wood waiting for a spark. And Lord Shiva not standing up for Daksha is a small thing. But all that dry wood of envy was already piled into the heart of Daksha. And then it just went, whoosh, it just burnt him and those around him. Then we see the anger of Nandi and Bhrigu. Why did they become angry? So this was just because the environment became tamasic. So Daksha's anger was intrinsic, it came from within. Nandi and Bhrigu's anger was extrinsic, it came from around them. When Daksha created this whole environment of ignorance by his anger, then Nandi also became passionate and he started cursing. And when Nandi became angry, Bhrigu became angry and he started counter-cursing. So when we are in an environment that is very, very passionate, so these will also give us clues on how to control our anger. So when we are in an environment where there's a lot of passion, people around us are also getting angry or they are just high on passion, then it stirs the baser modes. And that's what happened in case of Nandi and Bhrigu. Then we see the anger of Sati to her father. Before Sati gives up her body, she chastises her father because of his conduct. And then she says that being your daughter, my body is yours. So that's the material connection she has. So she says, as long as I have your body, I will be connected to you. So better for me to give up this body. So this is the anger that comes out of material frustration. Like Sati was materially connected to Daksha. And then there is the righteous anger of Shiva to Daksha. So not all anger is bad. So why did Lord Shiva get angry on Daksha? Because Sati Devi, she herself is a great Vaishnavi, a great devotee of Lord Vishnu. She has spotless character, she is chaste. And when Lord Shiva found out that Daksha was the cause, even though Daksha did not kill her, but he was directly the cause of her death, then he displays his anger in the form of Veerbhadra. So what is anger? So it's like an intense emotional state, and the person who is angry becomes very uncomfortable. Nobody can be in a placid, comfortable state while they are angry. One of the symptoms of anger is non-cooperation. That if a person is willing to help you under normal condition, when the person is under the influence of anger, no desire to help. Anger is an emotion that's characterized by antagonism. As we see, Daksha's antagonism towards Lord Shiva. And it's a negative feeling state that is associated with hostile thoughts and manipulative behavior. So from the scriptural perspective, in the 4th canto, when Maitreya Muni is giving Vidura the lineage of adharma, so he says that from Brahma is born Adharma, who marries Mrisha, whose falsity, and they have a son and a daughter, Damba and Maya, who marry. They have a son and daughter, Lobha and Nikriti, and they marry. And then appears anger, accompanied with himsa, which is envy and violence. So we see that anger is a cumulative product of interbreeding. So all these marriages are happening between brother and sister. So it's a cumulative effect of interbreeding of greed and cunning and bluffing and illusion and falsity and irreligion. And so many things, they combine and recombine, and then they produce anger accompanied with himsa. Whenever there is anger, there is violence. So anger accompanied with violence. And what does it result in? In mrityu, death. Death of whom? Death of the person. So it's not that a person in anger may always kill the other person. That might happen sometime. But what is certainly going to happen is that the person who is getting angry has died some more. And we'll see how that actually happens. It results in fear. Anger is often used to cover fear. And it also results in yatna, excessive pain, and finally niraya, hell. So I'll pause over here and see if you have any comments on what we have discussed so far.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Initially, I'm surprised why you took this topic, but it stirred a lot of emotions as I was hearing the pastime of Daksha Yajna pastime. One question, there are a lot of questions are there with respect to how would we handle, when the environment is not conducive. Because I could very well echo with the situation of Nandi and Bhrigu. They do not have any personal animosity beforehand, but still because of the environment, the emotions spurred up and cursed each other. And also all the related people who are nowhere connected to that, like the Brahmanas and the followers of Lord Shiva. So one question is like, if the atmosphere is tamasic, generally my preference is to run away from that situation. avoid that situation, not to be there in that kind of environment. If it is inevitable, how do one protect himself? That was one question. And because nobody wants to succumb to the anger, because during the situation of anger, we lose all our intelligence, and we don't know what we are acting at that time. So guidance on that front, how do one protect himself? And also the second point is, uh, the third point that you mentioned is Sati's anger towards Daksha, and seeing her bodily connection with her father, she gives up her body. uh, uh, I could see that seeing the bodily connection is a material aspect of it, but somehow still I feel that what she did is the right thing, rather than living in the body that is given by her father, who is a Vaishnava Aparadhi. And uh, so I, I still feeling that somehow that is righteous, at least from Sati's standpoint. But lessons for us, I can understand. Any further explanation on that front also will be helpful for us. These are two aspects, Prabhuji. Thank you.
So environment, as you pointed out, that's definitely a very strong factor in stirring emotions. If you've seen any videos of when there are riots, then very, very simple, straightforward people who under normal circumstances would probably not even think about speaking harshly to other people. They become a whole different environment. There's a phrase for it called mob fury, that the collective anger basically raises the individual emotions. What to do? So first part, what you said was right, that Lord Shiva's recommendation to Sati was, don't go there. So if there is an environment that you know that is going to generate these kinds of negative emotions, then better to not go there. If you are there, then somehow if you can avoid creating that environment. Like we see Lord Shiva, he did not respond with anger to Daksha's anger. So to some extent, it's in our control that if somebody is getting angry at us, and then we get angry at the other person, and then he gets more angry, and we get more angry, and then the third person sitting there gets angry, and then it just spreads, it grows and multiplies. So by not becoming a part of this cascading chain of growing anger, that's in our hand. We can't control the anger of other person. We can control our own anger. And finally, and we'll see this later on, the anger is a negative emotion and love is a positive emotion. So reciprocating anger with love, and actually in this case, love manifests as compassion. That takes away the anger. Now, these things are easier said than done, but at least if we strive to do them, we may not achieve it, but even a little bit, moving the needle a little bit can help diffuse the situation. I think the second point that you were making was that Sati's anger was righteous anger. So Sati's giving up her body was not the result of righteous anger. Sati chastising her father, that was righteous. Because she could see that her husband, who's an exalted person, and Sati speaks very logically. She speaks about the position of Lord Shiva. She establishes that it's not just she who's saying it, because one might say she's his wife. Every wife thinks that her husband has an exalted position. She says it's not like me, but other personalities consider Lord Shiva to be exalted. They want to keep the dust of his lotus feet. So that was righteous anger. But when she gave up her own body, that was out of frustration. She says that I'm connected to you, and you're such an offensive personality that you're offending such an exalted Vaishnava. There's nothing I can do about it other than sever my connection to you, which is this body that you have given me. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay. Any other thoughts, comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat Prabhupada. Very nice topic, Prabhu. We can relate it very much. Just one thought coming, that the whole episode of Daksha Prajapati and all the subsequent result out of that probably started with the enviness of Daksha, right? As per Lord Shiva. And on a similar line in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna also tells that everything, starts with a desire. So I think verse 62 or something, where he says Sangha Sanjayati Krodha. So basically everything starts from the sense subject desiring something, from where the attachment starts, and then attachment leads to anger. So how do we see the both of the thing? One is greed, the other one is desire. Probably they are related, but in this particular case, do we see a relation between these two?
So let's do this. That I actually have a slide on this coming up.
Okay,
if you
sure.
can hold the question, then hopefully I should be able to answer it when we
Sure.
reach.
Thank you.
Okay. Indulekha, you wanted to? Okay, you may want to unmute.
Yeah. So, am I to assume this correctly, that the anger that you are talking about over here is one of those intense ones, where, like Ravi Prabhu was saying, or you were saying that one loses one's intelligence and so on and so forth? Because I was just thinking there are all kinds of anger. There's a good anger, there's a bad anger, there's a good anger, like when we are, as parents, we are correcting our children, and there is that anger has a sound reason behind it. And then there are also the kinds, where the anger may not be so much at the surface, but then it is there inside the heart and the mind, and it's burning like a, like they say, like a coal burning you, and it's more like grudge and resentment, like long-lasting anger. Or there's something like a short-lived. Then there is anger for the right reasons. Like when we are defending Krishna's principles, and someone may try to, when we're sharing knowledge and someone is like, talking all kind of, nonsense, then we stand up and we express, and, or, protecting a Vaishnava, like one of the Prabhupada disciples did that. So yeah, I had these written down. There's anger for right reasons, for wrong reasons. So which particular anger, like there is Dhruv Maharaj also, that he had I mean, that anger resulted in a good, outcome. It had a good outcome, that anger of his. So, which particular anger is it? Like you're talking about only anger that the intense kinds, because you're just talking of Daksh to Shiva and then the Sati one last time.
Yeah, I think you bring up several relevant points. So like on this slide, I showed that in this particular pastime, there is the anger of Shiva on Daksha, which is righteous anger. Protecting her or correcting the behavior of somebody who offended a Vaishnava. We see Arjun's anger in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, service of Krishna. So that's good. That's righteous anger. The difference between righteous anger and the other kinds of anger is that the person uses righteous anger in the service of the Lord. In all other situations, the person is used by the anger, is consumed by the anger. So Srila Prabhupada disciples would describe that how this one particular incident, he was sitting in Mayapur, he was sitting with his disciples, very happy, they were all laughing and joking, and Prabhupada was in a light mood. And then one of his disciples came in and he had done some major goof up. And then Srila Prabhupada was very heavy on him. With a lot of anger, he chastised him and said, "This is nonsense, you should not do this." And the disciple, he gave obeisances and left the room. And then Prabhupada turned back and again he was smiling and laughing and joking. So this is a situation of where the guru is using anger for the benefit of the disciple. The guru does not come under the influence of anger because he could use it and then set it aside. But cases like Daksha and Nandi, they were the cases where they actually were used by anger. When the anger manifested, they lost their discrimination and they did activities that were harmful. So anger that cannot be used in the service of the Lord is bad anger. And there may be different grades of it. But if it cannot be used in the service of the Lord, then it is undesirable. It may be intense. Now, in the past times, we see extremes to make a point. But anger is anger. Whether it is internal, whether it is barely manifest, whether it is low grade, or whether it is intense, anger is anger. It is going to create those debilitating reactions. If it is low grade, maybe the reaction will be low grade, but the reaction will be there. If it stays for a long time, then the reactions stay for an equally long time. So Dhruva's case was a little different. That Dhruva did not achieve perfection because of his anger. He achieved perfection because he took the advice of his mother and of Narada. So that pastime demonstrates that even for one who is in the throes of anger, somehow or the else, if he is able to take good instructions from the right source, can achieve perfection. So their anger is shown to be an anchor, that it's something that can weigh down the person, unless the person somehow or the other is able to take shelter. Okay, Prabhu, you have your hand up. You're muted, Prabhu. Still muted.
Yeah. Prabhu, I think I'm okay now. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Prabhu, I have a question about the anger, but the righteous anger. And when you start, you don't know whether it is you intend to be righteousness, but it may not work out your way. It may be against you, I give you an example, a very good example. If you remember, in Bangladesh, about 3 months ago, there were a few people who attacked ISKCON temple, and then people from all over the world, they went, and we also went in front of the White House and we said, stage, there's something is bad and everything, Everything was done okay, Then after a month, those people attacked again ISKCON temple. So if somebody does not stand up for that, that's, in my opinion, wrong, That's why they had attacked second time. So the first time we did not show a braveness or angerness to the local people. Maybe that happened again. So when should we know whether it is right or wrong anger?
So the basis of that distinction is the basis of distinction for all our activities, not just anger. How do we know that something that we are doing is right or wrong? How do we know whether charity that we are giving is right or wrong? How do we know that guidance that we're giving is right or wrong? The basis is the scriptures. That if the scriptures endorse it, it is right. If scripture does not endorse it, it is wrong. So the example that you're giving, that how should we react when devotees are being threatened?
Yeah.
Right? The scriptures clearly say that that is the proper use of anger.
So maybe this first time, okay, is okay, but second time they should have shown some kind of angerness or something, so that it doesn't happen the third time.
Yeah, it's difficult for me to comment on that situation, but the principle that you're making, I completely agree with. That why second time? Even the first time. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had no tolerance for people who offended Vaishnavas. Didn't even give them one chance. Right away, he would be heavy on them. Right? So why even once? So the principle is that using anger in a righteous way is as supported by the scriptures. Indulekha was giving the example of parents, right? The parents, they use anger to improve the situation of their children so that they don't become vagrants, right? And other cases, Guru uses the anger to correct disciples. So these are all righteous angers. But the big difference is that the person does not get consumed by anger.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? The person uses anger for a purpose, and then when that purpose is achieved, then discards anger. A mother chastises the son when the son is naughty, so that the son does not get bad habits. But then that situation has gone, the anger is gone. The next moment, the mother and child, they are playing with one another, right? So that's the symptom of the appropriate use of anger. Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you, Prabhu. So this will relate a little bit to the question that was asked by Sachi Prabhu about the anatomy of anger. So I'll share this PowerPoint with all of you So you can have it. So Krishna talks about it in the end of chapter 2, right? Verse 62, 63. And he says that the first thing that happens is that the senses and the object of the senses interact with one another. And then one develops. Develops.
We're not able to see the whole thing. I don't know if you can. What about the others? I don't know if they can see the whole PowerPoint, the screen.
I can.
You can see the whole.
I think you're seeing on the, maybe because you're seeing on the phone, right?
No, I'm on the iPad right now.
Okay.
So anyways, problem is my end. No worries. Go ahead.
So there is calm. Calm is so not the CALM, but the KAMA, the Sanskrit calm. So calm is basically the lusty attachment, that I need to have this. And calm results in growth. So here it says that unsatisfied lust results in anger, but actually even satisfied lust results in anger. Because unsatisfied, you can understand that I wanted to have that car, I could not get it, so I'm angry. But even when a person gets a car, there is still anger because they have wanted the car for such a long time. When they get it, they realize that it's not satisfying their lust. Because getting sense objects is essentially, it's like putting fuel in the fire. The more fuel you put, the brighter the fire burns. The person now wants a bigger car, a better car. The same car that the person was so desperately lusting after, now the person begins to hate that car. This is only going so fast and this is not having these features. What happens after anger is delusion. So delusion, bewilderment, loss of intelligence. So these are all progressive stages of getting detached from reality. And ultimately, it says then one falls down into gross material existence. So one falls down in the mode of ignorance. And the person who lives in the mode of anger, he takes birth in the lower species. In the Bhagavad Gita 16:21, Krishna says there are 3 gates to hell: lust, anger, and greed. And in the Vedic scriptures, it is said that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Because when the person is angry, then the person is actually harming himself more. So Indulekha was making this point that sometimes people hold anger within them. And it simmers and simmers. The other person may not even be aware that this person is angry. But it is essentially like you yourself are consuming poison and expecting the other person to die. So you're harming yourself. And the reason Krishna gives us these stages is because at each of the stage, there is an ability for us to stop it. When anger is at a thinking stage, then we can always stop it by being philosophically anchored in the right conception. That we begin to lust for something, or even we are at the stage where the senses are reaching out. But then intellectually knowing that this is going to be a debilitating engagement. Knowing that when my senses will engage with these objects, the outcome will be negative. or if one is in a feeling stage, one is developing attachment, then one can redirect that attachment to something else. And when one is actually in the willing and doing stage, then when being in the association of those who are not in that mood helps. So willing means that at this point, the person is ready to act upon it. And just like the mob mentality is debilitating, sadhu sangha is protection. So I'm very angry, and then I look around me, the person next to me is peacefully chanting, the person on the right side is reading Bhagavad Gita, another person is doing kirtan. It's very unlikely that I'm going to do anything rash because of my anger. So knowing, Krishna gives the anatomy of anger and its consequences in order to help us protect ourselves. So we saw from this pastime of Daksha that anger may be a singular event, but its consequences are many. So we see Daksha's bewilderment. He forgot, he even started criticizing Lord Brahma, his father. He started criticizing the great demigods who were sitting in the assembly. He criticized implicitly, in the sense he turned the back to them and went away. It's painful. The person who was suffering the most in this was actually Daksha. The description is given how he was breathing heavily, and so he had all the symptoms of a person in acute pain. So harmful. We can see what was the result of this, the anger, that it was ultimately he got killed. But not only did he get killed, it created so much of chaos for those around him and for posterity. And dread and terror, insensitivity, illusion. So these are all the effects that come because of anger. So anger may come like a spark, but then it becomes a fire with many flames, and each flame consumes something, a tree or a shrub, and it spreads like that. So what do we do with this? So we know that anger is not good. We know the causes of anger. So there is a philosophical perspective and there is a practical perspective. Philosophical perspective, it stops the anger at a thinking stage. That's where the mind is, intelligence is. So one of the biggest weapons that we can have is this acceptance of the fact that whatever is happening is as per destiny. Now, in case of Lord Shiva, he was, of course, a much more exalted personality. So he just accepted it. That Daksha is getting angry, let it be. Now, we are not Lord Shiva, but we can still develop that intellectual understanding that this event that is happening. So in Ramayana, it is that pastime is given that when Raman attacked an ancestor of Lord Ram, King Aranyana, and in the battle, Raman kills him, or he mortally wounds him. So he's lying on the ground, dying, and then Raman comes to kind of gloat over him, to watch him die. And then the king looks at him and he says that you are not the cause of my death. You are simply the instrument of my death. Because there is only one cause of my death, and that is my own destiny. So when things happen around us that we consider to be negative, by accepting the fact that it's the result of our own previous karma that is manifesting as destiny. then what are the philosophical perspective? If we accept the fact that with the exception of the Lord, everyone else is fallible, then the anger that we have towards the mistakes that other people make, the mistakes that we make, that gets converted into acceptance. So acceptance is a powerful factor over here. When we see somebody else make a mistake, then the level of anger is much higher. When we make this ourselves, we make the same mistake, then there is no anger or very less anger. Because we are more accepting of ourselves than of the other person. We are more tolerant of ourselves than of the other person. Right? So if I accidentally break a plate, and I'll say, okay, no, it's just a plate, it slipped out of my hand, could happen to anybody. Indulekha breaks the plate, and I say, you have to be more careful, why can't you, etc. I mean, not that I say it, but I'm giving it as an example. So one tends to accept oneself more. But if you are able to project that acceptance to others also, that the fallibility is universal with the exception of the Lord. Philosophically, again, if you see that anger is actually coming from within us, that it is coming, that there is lust within us that is coming, manifesting as anger. So it is, its roots are within us. It is not actually because of somebody else. So we are the cause of the anger. So then that helps us take responsibility of it. And ultimately, if you see that this is an impediment to one's spiritual advancement. So we see so many personalities, because of anger, they're unable to make advancements. Vishwamitra is a classic case. That great yogi, able to perform great austerities, but he had this anger management issue. And in Ramayana it said that he used to be performing austerities, and then he would get angry, and then after he would get angry and curse, and then he would say, now I have to do it again, I have to perform my austerities again. So he went on this roller coaster. Durvasha Muni, great mistake, problem with anger. Practical perspective, we can understand that anger is a choice. So Daksha did not have to be angry. He chose to be angry. Now they were pushings from within. He chose to act upon it. So the fact that anger is a choice means that we can choose not to be angry. Then one's action is essentially reflected and amplified. We see that in anger, but we also see that in affection. So from a practical perspective, if we respond to anger with anger, the situation will only devolve. Daksha was angry, Nandi was angry, Bhrigu was angry, Sati was angry. So we see all this anger getting reflected and amplified. But if anger is reciprocated with affection and friendship, that's the end. Bas khatam. Right? Everybody is the winner. One should also understand that anger is a sign of weakness. A person who's getting angry is essentially holding up a flag saying that I have lost control. Anger is a sign of loss of control. So this is something that we can remember when we are becoming angry. Question ourselves that what is the control we are losing? And this is something that can also help us develop compassion towards the other person. When the other person is getting angry, then regardless of what externally he is saying, but internally there's a flag that is holding up. Help me, I have lost control. Please help me. And from a practical perspective, one responds better to cooperation than anger. It's like they say that you can catch more flies by honey than vinegar. Right? So love and cooperation, they are more conducive to a positive environment than anger. Some people try to use anger to control a situation, but it actually has the opposite effect. So based on this, some practical tips on how to control one's anger. So we can adjust to the situation. Lord Shiva saw that Daksha was angry and he simply got up and went away. That was in his control. Then we can replace our own negative emotions with positive ones. If we see that anger is coming, then it's not good enough to be neutral. One should replace it with positive. So like we say that, what is the best way to avoid Vaishnava Prad? What's the best way to avoid Vaishnava Prad is Vaishnava Seva. If you're serving somebody, you can't offend the person. If you're glorifying somebody, you can't criticize the person. So if you're seeing anger, then if you replace it with compassion, then the two cannot coexist. One is darkness, one is light. Anger is also a time to look at the good qualities of the other person. So this forces the mind to discriminate. Otherwise, it's simply going in the flow of negativity. Asking ourselves this question that, how important is this situation in the scheme of things? That when sometimes people get angry, they say things or they do things that essentially alters the fabric of the relationship. And then later on, they repent. But if they are able to think before, ahead of time, that I'm getting angry, but the impact of anger is that it may substantively change the nature of the relationship. So it gives us a perspective. Is it really worth it getting angry? Then understanding that it's only the modes that are in play. Right? So it allows one to distance oneself. One says, I'm getting angry, and the person takes a step back and says, it's just the mode of passion and ignorance that is acting on me. Let me try to increase the mode of goodness. And then finally, understanding that Krishna is happy with one who tolerates. Right? From the beginning of the second chapter, over and over again, Krishna says, one who is able to tolerate that dhiras tatra na muyati. He never gets bewildered. One who is able to tolerate the adversities, praise and dishonor, heat and cold. Krishna is very, very fond of the person who displays these characteristics. So if not to anybody, at least we can do it as a service to Krishna, to get into Krishna's good book. So this is a short story of how to respond to another's anger. The story of a sage and a scorpion. that a sage was once taking bath in a river, and then he picked up some water in his palm, and there was a scorpion that had been somehow trapped into the water. So it was drowning in the water and accidentally came up in the hand of the sage. And the scorpion stung the sage. And because of the pain, the sage's hand went back and the scorpion fell back in the water. And the sage knew that the scorpion falling back in the water, the scorpion would die. So he again picks up the scorpion, and the scorpion stings him again, and he drops him again and picks him again. And finally, he's able to take him to the shore. So there was another person watching, and he said, "Why are you doing this? Look at your hand, it's all swollen. You were trying to rescue that scorpion, and it kept stinging you. You should have just let it go in the water." So the sage said, you look at the scorpion, that its life is at risk. It's falling in the water to certain death, but it's not able to give up its nature. And I am supposed to be a sage. Why should I give up my nature? My nature is to save and protect. If I respond to the scorpion like a scorpion, then I am actually worse off than the scorpion. Because the scorpion is openly saying that I am envious. I will inject poison in you. But I'm going around saying everybody that I'm a sage. And now I become a scorpion to a scorpion, so I'm actually worse than them. So similarly, it is not necessary for us to react to the other person in the way that they are acting. If the other person is a scorpion, does not mean that we become a scorpion. If the other person is giving into anger, does not mean that we give into anger. We can tolerate, we can respond with compassion, different ways too, depending on the situation, distance ourselves from the person, but does not mean that we become like the person. And then, of course, I wanted to end with that there is always anger that is justified, which is for the benefit of the others, according to the scriptural injunctions, guru to disciple, parent to child, directed against those who are envious of the Lord. So Lord Shiva's anger was justified anger, different from Daksha's anger. For general benefit, said that even a saint is happy when a serpent is killed, as a service to Guru or Krishna, as in Mahabharata. So taking, at the end of the day, our biggest protection is taking shelter of Krishna. That will convert anger into compassion. And developing this understanding that it was never between you and them, it was always between you and Krishna. So, conclusion, anger is a debilitating emotion, both to one's own self and to others around you. And a devotee avoids getting angry by understanding its cause, lust, ego, pride, envy, and addressing them through philosophical understanding, devotional practices. When one is the object of anger, tolerance, compassion is the best approach. In rare situation, anger can be used in the service of the Lord. So we should not take too much shelter of this, that, somebody is getting angry and then saying, actually it is for the benefit of the other person. One has to be, one has to carefully understand that yes, indeed it is for the benefit of the other person. Not getting angry is not a sign of weakness. Sometimes people think that anger is coming from a platform of strength. Actually, anger is coming from a platform of weakness. And not getting angry is coming from a platform of maturity. Not responding to anger is coming from a platform of strength. Okay, so I'll end over here, and how do I stop sharing? Yeah. Okay. Any discussions? Padmini Radha Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dhanavad Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Guru Maharaj and Prabhupada. Prabhu, I was just thinking about, what you were talking about when it comes to tolerance and trying to understand that in situations of where we get angry and in situations of suffering, personally, how we need to understand that it is because of our past karma or things like that, and it's so important to not get angry. I just wanted to share, we were having this discussion yesterday at home, and I realized that when I was relatively new, I used to hear Indulekha Mataji say ki इस devotee के साथ बहुत, that devotee has gone through a lot of purification. तो मुझे समझता नहीं था why she uses the purification, and I just thought about it when I was having this discussion with family, that your perspective changes so much when you're trying to practice spirituality. You don't look at hardships as hardships, but you look at them as purification, because you're trying to understand that the Lord is making you go through this purificatory process to get closer to Him. So that was one realization I wanted to share, and I guess that ties in with anger also, like, because there are so many situations in life we face where we feel helpless, and sometimes the anger stems from that helplessness, and I guess it's important to remind ourselves of that position. And then, Prabhu, I had one question. When you spoke about anger, when dealing with anger with others, I guess, but you were talking in the context of when someone is angry at you, correct? So how do you I guess help someone who is angry, but not at you, but at someone else, and they are not even devotees? Because there are times where I have to deal with situations where someone is angry in a particular situation and they are not on the path of bhakti, on the path of practicing bhakti. So I guess in that situation, they are beyond the understanding of this is your karma or ye tumhare saath aise hua because tumne kuch bura kiya hai. So they are beyond all of that at that point. So what should be my practical points to deal with people when they are angry, not at me, at situations or at other people or in general?
Sure, I think it's a very good question. So in general, your ability to influence another person, it depends on how open the person is to you. So if you're going to counsel somebody about anger, then the person needs to have faith in you. So if you're angry yourself every day, and then you go to the person and say, Prabhu, don't be angry. And say, you're yourself angry, right? So your words are not going to have much impact. So that's first. That's like kind of opening the gate. I'm saying what I practice. For a person who is not actively a devotee, almost all the points that were made can still be made. Right? So we discussed about this, that anger is debilitating. It's not going to solve the problem. It's actually going to make it worse. The person who suffers the most is the person who is angry. Nobody else. The person who's angry, he suffers the most. These are things that are empirical, experiential. We've all been angry in our lives, and we all experience this. that other person may or may not suffer, but 100% sure you will suffer because of anger. And significant point here is that if a person is using anger to resolve a situation, there are other more potent ways to resolve the situation. And the person is angry at somebody saying that I always tell this person to close the door when come in, they always forget to close the door. Being angry is not going to solve the problem, right? But there are other ways to solve the problem, appearing to the person's intellect, goodwill, compassion. Right? So in terms of using it as a means to an end, it's probably one of the most ineffective ways to achieve it. Giving the person an ability to connect with at an experiential level, that there is a time when you had the choice of being angry, but you did not get angry. And compare that with the situation when you became angry. And what was the outcomes? How did it feel? I can guarantee you that 99.9% of the people will say that it was much better when I was not angry. Very few people will say that, oh, it was very nice, I got angry and I really felt good after that. Yeah. So somebody has to be really messed up to say that. So just connecting them to their own experiences, right? So it's not that you're telling them, you're asking them to learn from themselves, right? That some thoughts in that direction.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you, Madhuji. Hare Krishna, Devar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for a very nice lecture, and I think I really appreciate for all the examples which you gave, correlating with the anger. That was really helpful. So, Prabhu, I just have one question. I think what you mentioned, I think probably a realization or maybe, something in my experience. But you mentioned something, the anger starts with, initially starts with the thinking, and then, but it's the awareness factor, which is very critical before that blast, that goes in thinking, thought goes into a different stage. And I think in the next one, you mentioned about control of angers. And you mentioned about the negative emotions and converting into positive emotions. So in my experience, at least when I get angry, and I think, I don't know how, but sometimes, though I do have that awareness, but sometimes, I connect my present with the past experience or the past emotions. And it's kind of very hard to get out of even though I know the present, how to deal with that thought, but the past emotions or that experience kind of drag the present. The present relates with the past, and I don't know how to explain, but that kind of. So my point is, as you mentioned about the way to control anger is to convert negative to positive emotions. I don't know how much you can do it. I'm just thinking from the example which you gave from Sati to Daksha and material frustration. Sati was, even a daughter of Daksha, and he was also a very exalted devotee. And I'm sure about it. And, Daksha has done a lot for his daughter. So she could have had a lot of positive emotions to think about or to incline towards rather than getting angry to her father. But it's hard, even for them. So, in the spiritual path, I'm trying, I understand, I'm having that awareness, but somehow, connecting to that past experience or emotions, it's very hard to get away with that. So I don't know how that can be controlled. So thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. So excellent point. A lot of these things are easier said than done, but it does not mean that they cannot be done. Right? When in the 6th chapter, Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is preaching to Arjun the whole Astanga Yoga meditation, and then Arjun says, controlling the mind is very difficult. It's like the wind. And Krishna says, you're right. But abhyasena vairagena, right? He says two things. Practice and detachment. So maybe for every 10 times we get angry, if you're able to not get angry one time, then that builds our anti-anger muscles. Maybe next time it becomes, out of 10 times, 2 times we are not angry. Right? And Vairagya is the renunciation is, sense of renunciation is important, because not getting angry is not a way to succeed. It's not that we say to ourselves, if I don't get angry, I'll get the upper hand of the person. I'll make the other person feel bad, or I will maneuver the situation to my advantage. Not getting angry or responding to anger without anger puts you in a more vulnerable position. The other person is angry at you and you're not responding with anger, then he may say things at you and you may want to say things back in anger, but you don't, you choose not to. Right? So there is a certain amount of vairagya, there's a certain amount of detachment that needs to be there, that okay, my false ego is acting up. I'm being called names, my position is being diminished, or my importance is not being understood, so be it. And as we do that more and more, our ability to withstand it becomes more and more, right? So it's a process. What we have stated over here is perfection, but if you have to take it and apply it in our lives, then it's not going to change things in the first day that, now I know, now I will never get angry. But if we follow it through, then it will reduce it and reduce it and reduce it to a point that it becomes like natural. Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Indulekha?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Padmini Radha. So sorry. Padmini Radha. And I'm not a psychologist, but there's something that you can do, because the person who is angry is hurting. So it's because maybe that person has been hurt by the other person, like emotionally, psychologically, in many ways, and or it's just that the whole situation is so messy that there is anger on both sides, or so. This is something I learned from Panamalini Mataji, and she said that first thing you should try and do is empathize with the person. And empathizing means that just say a few things like, yeah, I understand, I know it's hurting, and I know, the person, it wasn't the right thing to do, etc., etc. And then the second thing is maybe to question the person who's angry should question himself or herself: is it worth it? Is this whole feeling that I'm having or going through, is it worth my energy and my time? Because it is ultimately, it's debilitating. It's not good for my physical self, my emotional self, my sanity. And at so many levels, anger is very it's very debilitating. It really holds back a person like this, really tight. And it can then actually then spoil other relationships also. It can affect other relationships, close relationships, because that anger is going to come out in some other form and with other relationships. So that's the second thing. And then third thing, she told me that, yes, of course, in your case, maybe you're saying it's because this person is not a devotee, but when we are dealing with devotees, then like my husband was saying, we have to question ourselves, or let the other person know that, think about it. Why do you want to let it come between you and Krishna? Why let this anger come between you and Krishna? Krishna's not going to be happy with it. And we have to let it go. We have to let it go. And number one for that is try to forgive. And I remember hearing this when we attended one of Mahatma Prabhu's retreats many, many years back, that he gave a retreat on forgiveness. Because, like I said before, that sometimes that hurt is of many, 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 whatever the past, and it's so intense. There's a resentment and there's all this negative energy you're holding, and you have to just push, just let it go. And just say that, no, I don't want to deal with any of this I don't want all of this in me, because I don't want to spoil my relationship with Krishna. The other person, whoever it is, whoever did it, let Krishna deal with this person and let him, I don't want to be there in between, period. So this is maybe, I don't know, like I said, I'm not a psychologist, but if, if this can help you.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Indaleka. Adi Govind Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Babuji. Thank you so much for a very nice topic. I guess you answered the question that I have when Dhaval Prabhu asked his question. My question was more so on the lines of tolerance, Prabhuji. So it seems like everything comes down to tolerating, and tolerance seems to be a very spiritual quality that one must have. So I just wanted to know if there are any practical tips for growing that quality, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. You have the Brahmastra with you. Chanting, it's the fountainhead of so many good qualities, including tolerance. Then the other points that I made, just understanding philosophically that you're not the body, you're the soul. Diffuses both your sense of being angry and sense of responding to anger. Right? So Krishna describes in the second chapter, right, how the senses and the object, so it's all external to the soul. The senses and the object interact, and then from calm, growth comes, right? So just seeing it from that perspective, that these are all the superfluous things that are interacting with one another, and the friction of that is creating anger. So it gives you an outer body experience that, it's like you're driving in a car, and the car has a coolant problem and the car is getting hot. So you're driving in the car, you can see that the car is getting hotter and hotter, but then it's just the car, it's not you. It's the car that's getting hotter, it's something problem. So that's what philosophy gives us, that discrimination. These are essentially just the modes that are acting. And as practicing devotees, this is a point that Ramprabhu Maharaj makes very often. Radhanath Maharaj also makes this point, that substituting it with the opposite is more potent. So one should not strive to go from a state of being angry to not angry. And not angry is a neutral state. But we should substitute anger with compassion. We see in the pastime of Prithu Maharaj, Indra was trying to steal his horse. Right? Brahma comes and he says, give up your anger to Indra. Prithu says, okay. Lord Vishnu comes and says, make friends with him. Right? That's a higher platform. How can you be angry once you're friends with somebody? So if we conduct ourselves in that way, that somebody is getting angry at them, we don't go to a neutral state, but we go to the opposite state. That takes the anger away from that person. There's this book distribution story that there was a Mataji in a metro And she was trying to distribute Prabhupada's books. And she approached a person standing there, would you like this book? And the person took the book, he tore it into half, he stamped on it, and he said that, how dare you come and invade my personal space, etc., etc. And this devotee Mataji, she looked at him and she felt just so sad for him. She was so compassionate. She just actually started crying. I said, why are you crying? And she said, I feel so bad for you, that you're being consumed by this anger. And when he heard that, his anger, it just disappeared. He actually ended up taking books and apologizing to her. Okay, so we are actually running out of time. Maybe we'll Vikas Prabhu and Ravi Prabhu, then we'll stop after that. Please go ahead, Vikas Prabhu.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Yeah, I think topic was very practical. I think it generates a lot of thoughts. I'm kind of like, when I was thinking of asking question as well, a lot of thoughts were going in my mind, and like most of the question already been answered as well. But just want to like ask, like most of the time, I'm trying to think of it like of a situation why a person gets angry. Like in my mind, it comes as like most of the time it's like suppressed anger, something. Even if I take like myself as an example, so I don't even know, I'm going in at a place in a very calm mind and going, and like suddenly something, let's say if you are going somewhere and suddenly some situation happens where it just like triggers you, right? And then even if you know, okay, like you have to do like all this stuff like detachment, or think about positive thoughts and everything, but you still, like before those thoughts even come to your mind, like the situation is already gone, right? Like you already have reacted, or like so I'm kind of like thinking like how can, because what situation we can be in, we don't know, and then what beliefs or like what negative emotion we might have been like suppressing inside, that also we don't know, right? So both of these things are not in our control, right? So I'm thinking about why, like how can we handle those situations, and the second thing I'm also was thinking like there are like few people like who are able to handle this same situation as you gave example of like Lord Shiva and Mata Sati, that Shiva was able to like get up and go away. Instead, like when Sati, she gave her life, like she gave her body, right? So same situation, two person, but why did like someone took such a grief and like they were able to like just give up their body, but the other person is just like just got up and then go away. Like I think one reason which I see is like the detachment. So most of the time, like with that situation, every person have some, because Mata Sati have that attachment with their father and with her husband. So because she can't see that as Mataji pointed out, you have like all those like you can't see that situation happening, that your like father and your husband are like fighting, right? So being into that situation, she thought, okay, like I'm just like maybe like assuming, or maybe like paraphrasing, but she might have thought like rather than living with that guilt and that pain, it's better to leave your body than just get away with it, right? So yeah, so that's what I was kind of like thinking through it, like yeah. So yeah, mainly because question was the first one, like how we don't know the situation, we don't know what suppressed emotion we might have, then how can we try to make sure that we don't get like triggered?
Thank you, Prabhu. It's a good practical question. So at least as practicing devotees, we do two things. We try and we rely on the mercy. So yes, anger more often than not gets the better of us. It cannot get the better of Krishna. Right? Prabhupada would give this example that you're in a boxing ring with a person who's more powerful than you, no matter how many times you enter in the boxing ring, the person will always beat you. It's not a probability thing that maybe 10th time I'll get the better, 20th time I'll get the better. Every time you go into boxing ring with Mike Tyson, he'll beat you up. But let's assume that you have a friend who is more powerful than the opponent, and you enter the ring with that person. Every time you will win. So the modes of material nature will always defeat you. Krishna will always defeat the modes of material nature. So if we have Krishna in our corner, then these things that we say that I'm helpless. I mean, you were presenting it very nicely. You actually get that feeling of helplessness because the modes are more powerful than you. What to do? Take shelter of Krishna by chanting, serving devotees, serving the scripture, serving the deities. Those are all the things that get Krishna in our corner. Now, Krishna does want to see us put some effort. Right? In Ramayana, we know when Sugriv went to Lord Ram, saying that whenever I fight with Bali, he beats me. He's more powerful than me. Now, Lord Ram could have gone and killed Bali straight away. No problem. Or he could have challenged him to a fight and killed him. But what did Lord Ram say? You fight with him, then I will help you. So when Sugriv fights with Vali, then he kills Vali. So the Lord wants us to also demonstrate our sincerity by making effort. We may not succeed, but we can't just say that, well, I'm chanting now. Every time I get angry, it's Krishna's fault. So some effort needs to be there in controlling it. Like with Dhaval Prabhu, the point was made. If you're getting angry 10 times, and then after this deliberation, you're able to get angry 9 times, Krishna will take care of the other 9 times. But at least you have to try that one time. Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. 2 questions, Prabhuji. One is like, how do we control impulsive reactions? Because you know, many times I saw 2 kinds of people. Some people, they hold the anger, like Daksha. He would have offended on that day when Lord Shiva not got up, but he hold that anger even after a while. Also, he consistently had that. So that is not impulsive reaction. Whereas Lord Shiva, he is, of course, his anger is rightful, but as soon as he knows that Sati was died, then immediately he got that anger. But the very next moment, like when all the devatas and all, they went and seek his forgiveness, at that time he is extremely peaceful. So but in Shiva's case, everything is rightful, even the damage that has done Daksha Yajna and all. But with the impulsive reactions, I feel like more dangerous, because although you don't keep so much negativity in your heart, but the impulsive reactions does the damage. So how do we control the momentary impulses? Because the negative impressions, we sow the seeds by these reactions. So that is one question, Prabhuji. And also, second question is, sometimes we hear like certain negative emotions. Suppose if somebody is having pain, like, kabhi kabhi bolte hai, dil bhar ke ro, like, cry, or you vent your pain, so it will subside. So I'm not sure whether that is the right understanding. You can help me on that. And also, is there any negative emotions that can be vented out so that they can calm down?
So venting is, it's just a word, right? Venting in the context of sharing it is obviously helpful. So venting means that you are there with somebody, you are expressing your concerns or your angst, and the person is basically either able to present a spiritual perspective or just give you a sympathetic ear. So, that way it is. You're venting to somebody that this person did this, and the person is saying, "Oh, really? That's really bad. You should." So the person is adding fuel to fire. That venting is definitely not recommended. But otherwise, the whole purpose or the advantage of venting is that you're able to get behind your own false ego.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're essentially having a conversation with yourself. This person did wrong to me. You say, yes, this person did wrong to me. I'm the victim. Yes, you're the victim. My anger is justified. My anger is righteous. Yes, your anger is righteous. So you're essentially having a conversation with yourself and agreeing with yourself. Venting allows you to get somebody else's perspective. Right? And the other person hopefully is able to give you a more balanced, impartial. If the person is a devotee, can give you a more philosophical perspective. In terms of the first question that you had said that anger is an impulse, it is an impulse. That is true. It's an impulse in the sense that, like in case of Daksha, we see the impulse of anger that was essentially sitting on a long simmering resentment to Lord Shiva. If you did not have that simmering resentment, then that anger would not have flared up at the time. Okay? So controlling impulses is difficult, but we can control the simmering resentment that we have. And because it takes a while for the fire to flare up. And when it does, then we can take other shelters. But like they say, the best form of attack is defense. So if you're launching attack on anger, best thing is for us to be prepared for it. So if you're in a situation that with a colleague of yours and the person is always pushing your buttons incorrectly, now you know there is a potential of anger over here. It's one day the person will push a button too much and things will flare up. So better to be proactive about it. I know this is an inflammable situation. Let me avoid association with this person. Let me talk to him in a more reasonable way, express my concern. So it's just being proactive about it. Okay, so I'm sorry we took long time. We do not have time to chant around. We'll end with the nursing of the prayer. And do we have a volunteer for that?